This is section 2.1, linear equations, the addition and multiplication properties of equality. Look at this picture here. This is supposed to be a scale, and I want you to keep this in mind as we do problems on this chapter. Anything that has to do with an equation, this scale, you always want to keep it balanced. So whatever you add to one side, you must add to the other side, so it'll stay balanced. So you treat an equation the same way. You always want to keep the equation equal. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side, so it'll stay equal. You're also going to be using the idea of opposite operations to solve equations. For instance, the operation of addition, its opposite operation is subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. The opposite of multiplication is division. And the opposite of division is multiplication. And this will make a little more sense once you see some examples on this video. Let's go to the next slide. I'm just going to ask you to follow along, and eventually you're going to start to see what is it that you need to do to solve an equation. Okay, so here we go. Let's do an equation, and basically this is what a book does to create the equations that you have to do for homework. So they always start out with x equals something. In this case, x equals 8. And again, this is what the book does. So you don't know this, but this is what they do. X equals 8. Then they do something. In this case, in this example, they subtract 3 from both sides. So I take the equation and I'm going to take away 3 from both sides, as you can see here. Excuse me. Take away 3 from both sides. Then I'm going to simplify. And this is what I get. X minus 3 equals 5. And this equation is what you see in the book. This is what you do for homework. So now, again, kind of stay with me. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to undo this equation. You're going to solve this equation that you see here. So here we go. We're going to work with x minus 3. You're going to undo what they did. So you're going to use the idea of opposite of what they did, undoing what they did. So the book, what they did is they subtracted 3 from both sides. What is it that you need to do? The opposite of subtracting is adding 3 to both sides. So you do that to both sides of the equation to maintain equality. And once you have this expression, you basically simplify. And once you simplify, you get x equals 8. And of course, it matches what the book started with. If you were to go back and plug in x equals 8 into the equation that you have here, 8 minus 3 equals 5, so it also checks. Okay? Again, this is what the book gives you for homework. And this is what you have to do to solve the equation. What I'm trying to show you is what you must do is the opposite of what the book did. You have to undo what the book did. Okay? Let me go on to the next slide. Let's look at the next example. Again, this is what the book is going to do. Start out with 4 over 7 equals y. They're going to do something. In this case, they're going to add 1/7 to both sides. At this point, they added 1/7, simplify, and this is what they get. So this is the equation that you have to undo. And again, you do not have this information. And you're not even going to be given this information, but basically to solve the equation, to undo the equation, you just have to recognize what they did and you just do the opposite. Okay? So here we go. At this point, you look at this, and since they added 1/7 to both sides, notice that there's a plus here, 1/7. What is it that you're going to do? You're going to do the opposite of adding, which is subtracting 1/7 from both sides. You do that to both sides, because you want to maintain equality. You want to maintain this equation equal. Then you simplify. Once you simplify, notice that this goes away. You're over here, and 5 over 7 minus 1/7 is equal to 4/7 equals y, or y equal to 4/7. And again, it matches with what the book started, or you go back and plug it into the original equation to check. Okay? Let's move on to the next slide. So again, book started with x equals negative 36. Divide both sides by 3. Once I divide both sides by 3, I need to simplify. And this is basically what the book is going to give you, and this is what you're going to have to undo. So you undo this equation. This is the problem that somehow is going to, something like this is going to appear on your book as a homework exercise. So you look at this and you recognize that they did something here to this side. They divided both sides by 3. You should recognize that you need to multiply, because the opposite of division is multiplication. Both sides by 3. So 3 times the left side, 3 times the right hand side. You simplify. Notice that these go away. And then negative times positive is negative. In this case, 12 times 3 is 36. So the answer is negative 36. And again, you can go back and check. Plug in negative 36 here, divided by 3, and you end up with negative 12. Again, so the whole idea here is you basically have to do what, you have to undo what the book did. Okay, by looking at the equation, you should recognize some operations in the equation, and you just basically do the opposite of what they did. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So here's some practice problems. Just kind of follow along, or if you want to pause the video and try some of these on your own and check your answer at the end of this problem, you may do so. You may do that as well. So here's number 1. So you have negative 6t equals 21. So I recognize that there's a operation here. More specifically, this is a multiplication. So what is the opposite of multiplication? Division. So that's why I'm going to divide both sides by. They're multiplying by negative 6. I am going to divide by negative 6. Once I do that, this is going to go away, and I'm left with t. And then I have negative 21 over 6. Now this is an improper fraction, and I also can rewrite this in lowest terms. So my answer is either going to be negative 7 over 2, because once I divide by 3 I get this, or I change this improper to a mix, negative 3.5. Let's go on to number 2. Okay, so I have this equation. I need to do the opposite thing that they did, the opposite operation that they did. And notice that I have negative 1/4. So what is it that I need to do to both sides? The opposite of taking away 1/4 is adding 1/4 to both sides. So once I do that, this is what I have. And notice that these cancel out, and I'm left with just m. And then I go to the left hand side, and I need to work with common denominators. So I multiply this by 2, and this by 2, and this by 3, and this is by 3, because the least common denominator of 6 and 4 is 12. And then that's how I end up with this 2 fractions. I take the sum, and I end up with 13 over 12, or 1 and 1/12, if I rewrite it as a mixed number. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So here's 3, x over 4 equals negative 12. If you also just read what it says there, you can read the following. X divided by 4 equals negative 12. So what I need to do is the opposite of what the book did. So in this case is they're dividing, so I am going to multiply by whatever they divided. So in this case they divided by 4, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So I'm doing the opposite of what they did. Once I do that, I notice that 4s are going to go away. And then all I need to do is multiply these two numbers, negative 12 and positive 4, and the answer is negative 48. I can also go back and check, plug in negative 48 here, divided by 4, and I can see that it equals negative 12. So this is my right solution after I check my work. If I come up with something and I plug it back into the original equation and I end up something that is not equal, then I know I made a mistake. So this will be the last problem, number 4. This one's going to be a little bit different. Basically, they multiply both sides by 3/2. But I'm not going to be using that idea. What I'm going to use in this problem is going to be using the idea of reciprocal. Because if I have any fraction and I multiply times its reciprocal, it goes away. Excuse me, it doesn't go away. It just becomes 1. So what I'm going to do is I recognize that if I multiply this fraction times its reciprocal, I'm just going to end up with x. But in order for me to maintain an equation equal, I need to do it to both sides. So that's why I multiply both sides by 2/3. And once I do that, again, all this just becomes x. And then once I multiply this, I use a little bit of pre-algebra, and I multiply 2 times 4, which is 8, and then 3 times 9, which is 27. There's no common factors, and I cannot forget that I'm multiplying a positive and a negative, and my answer is negative. And x is equal to negative 8 over 27. And this basically concludes the video of section 2.1. And if you have any questions in class, I'll be more than happy to clarify them for you.